Are you clutching your pearls? Are you getting
I
your
am,
collecting
I am,
yourself for
I
this?
am, I am, I am. How are you doing today? Happy
I'm
Mother's
lovely.
Day.
Oh, thank you. I really
Yeah,
appreciate that. I really
yeah.
appreciate that.
You're one of the best that ever did it. I have to tell you that you're raising just such a brilliant, smart, talented, creative son who is you know what, he is definitely much like you. He is 20 and finding his way and dabbling into lots of things to find out what he's passionate about, what he's interested in. You were the same way
Yes.
when you were that age. So I think he's if this is the start to, if you're the end, or you what's to see what comes to fruition from him in his finding stage, or whatever you want to call it, then it's going to be
Mhm.
all right. He's going to be dynamite if this is what it looks like at the end, or 20 years later after you've found and your calling, I want to say. So it's all good things. But yeah.
Oh, thank you, friend. I really appreciate that encouragement because, once upon a time, I thought you stopped mothering or parenting once that child turns 18, right? And they're on about their way. But what I've learned is you just learn how to continue to parent and navigate that relationship in a different way at different stages of life. And the reason, and I'm sure we'll get into that today, the reason why I think I struggled with that is because I lost my parents at a younger age. And so being parented at a certain age is sometimes foreign to me. I'm usually like, okay, you have the nest, go on about your way. So it's a blessing to be able to continue to parent. It's a blessing to be able to tell this story that we both are going to tell today and talk about how we have navigated through grief and mourning to still create some beautiful things in our lives. So, and our bestie, Lewis is totally agreeing. So thank you, love. We appreciate your love.
Well, and can I just say, I think you learn how to, not that I've ever been a parent, not that I probably will ever be a parent, but I think you learn how to parent differently after you get a certain age, right? And so
Yep.
it's less that commander style, or demand and command, which we think that parenting has to do. It's more of how do we influence, which that's really how we should be doing it. But I think you have to lean more on that influence as we get older and start to find our own and make our own decisions. And it's about allowing us to fall, and you no longer, they're rushing to pick us up, but being there after we get up, right?
Ooh,
From that. And so that's what it's about.
yeah.
And so I know I've seen your journey, and many of the beautiful parents that I have in my space, and I've seen their journey of the responsibility you all take on from that. And I always tell you all, I know it's hard to say this, but you got to start saying this is, after a while, we are no longer your responsibility. And we think about it, we really, at the end of the day, we really are, we are really children of God. That's the only person that owns us, if you want to think about it. But anyhow, I don't want to go into any of that day. I'm just going to say Happy Mother's Day. Thank you for all you do and you put into the universe, and for adding that extra motherly love into my life. Because you're right,
Aw.
I love my mother too. So, but that's what today's show is all about. So, you are welcome first before we get into all the
You did it. Thank you, Fred. You can tell y'all that we are nervous about getting to this conversation because it is deep, it's beautiful, it's very close to both of our hearts. But hello, every beautiful body out there. If you're not familiar with me, my name is Blaire G. Hervey. I am the founder and CEO of The Corporate Strategist. As always, I am joined by my colorful and definitely colorful today by Ensemble co-host, my bestie and soul friend of 20 plus years, DeAngelo Crane. You want to say hi, D?
Hello, everyone. So glad to be here with you today. If you're looking for a speaker, consultant, a facilitator, anything to come in and talk to your group, we are available. I'm available. Blaire's available, especially if you need someone for Pride Month to come and talk or facilitate a group discussion, a panel discussion, or be on your panel discussion. We're available. I'm available. Book me. Thank you.
I'm so proud of him for promoting himself. Excellent, because it's not always easy to do, but you're doing it. I love it. Well, get us started with our sunny segment.
All right, our sunny segment. Here on the Black DEIBA Collective, we do what we call the art of the check-in every day, because that's what we're asking leaders to do when you're working with, working next to, and engaging with your employees or your colleagues. And so it's really about going deeper than just how are you doing this morning, and keep moving. It's really about staying there and having a much richer conversation. And so how we like to do it on the DEIBA Collective is we like to ask, how's your mind, how's your soul, how's your heart today, Blaire?
Ooh, I'm doing well. I'm doing fine. I'm being sublime, all those good things. I'm actually have some great little Zen energy. I did have a withdrawal moment because I didn't go to yoga this morning. So I was like, oh, it's in me now. So yeah, but overall, still feeling very good, very calm. How are you feeling?
I'm doing pretty good. Well, it was a good balanced weekend of activity and a good time with the boo. So it's a good weekend. And now this Monday, so we're having it's Monday, back to the grind, the hustle and bustle of work. However, it's all good. It's all about balance. I love that when you figure out a good groove to your life and it's working for you, and
Mhm.
that's when you feel it, when you can be at your best, when things are not too heavy or leaning to one side or the other, right?
This is true. This is true. Well, good. I'm glad you're feeling fine, doing very well as we get into this very interesting topic today. You want to tell us a little bit tell us a little bit about why you brought it to the TBDC
No,
desk?
I did not bring it to. Let's back up, you all. Let's back up a little bit, you all. Is that we have a list of topics that we can discuss, and every time it's just the two of us when we can't book someone on the show. My shameless plug for today: if you'd like to come on the Black DEIBA Collective, we're always looking for guests to come on talk about interesting topics that are impacting the Black community or underrepresented community. So please come on the Black DEIBA Collective if you have something to say. Okay, back to the show now. Is that every time we are just the two of us, when you pick the topics and you always pick the hardest topics. You can't pick anything light. Like why can't we talk about laughter at work? Why can't we talk about workday fashions? Why can't you talk about like something light? You the last time it was does HR really support the black people at work? Remember that one? I was like, dang, you just going right on in, aren't you?
I love how he is deflecting and continue on with this nice little ramble. I support you. I see you. We are here now. So let's go ahead and dive into today's topic, which is all about navigating grief and mourning.
Well, yeah, I think that's what we're definitely talking about. That I think to be very transparent today and vulnerable on this show is that I have experienced the grief that I experienced in my life have all been while I've been an employee working in my big career or my lifelong career, right? And one of those deaths was early on, and one of them and many and the other two was mid career. So I've lost my brother at first at age I guess 24, maybe 23, 24, and then losing my mother at 29 and my father at 31, 14 months later, right? And so today we're just really wanting to have a really discussion around it. And that time you also lost your father in between me losing my mother and father, right? And we experienced that. And you'll share your story about when you lost your mother and the biggest thing that you taught me as you tell your story. I'll let you tell your story and then I'll talk about what you taught me that helped me process grief better. But today we just really want to lean into that, share some vulnerability, and really also just talk about when we're thinking about what this show is about. It's really about helping leaders and Black employees and colleagues and people work with people who are Black in the workplace and how to support them and keep them engaged. Also, sharing with leaders how do you help employees navigate grief and mourning in the workplace, right? And the different levels of it and what that looks like. Because also, I don't think we talk enough about it, and I will talk a little bit about it when we put on the description was that grief is not only limited to you losing a parent or a sibling or a family member. Grief is also the loss of a relationship that you may have been in for many years, or maybe even as people are experiencing being laid off from their job, they're experiencing a level of grief and mourning from a job that they may have known for 20 years, and now they have to reimagine what their life is going to look like, or they're out in the job market, and that can be very difficult. I just saw someone's post today. They were like, it's really getting bleak out here, right? And the
Mm.
rejection letters were piling up. So I think we can talk about multi levels. We're going to kind of talk about our experience, and I think we can, if we're able to hit on that, we will. But I just want to make sure we acknowledge that people are grieving in so many different ways, and we need to be thoughtful of those different things that are causing people grief and that they're mourning over the loss of. So, all right, well, okay, Blair. So I set us up. Now you
I'll knock them down. Well, so anyone who knows me knows that maybe you don't know the specific date that was a critical point in my life and has affected every area of my life since I was 12 years old. So March 20th, 1996, I woke up and I went into my mother's bedroom and found her lying there next to my brother, who was 2 years old at the time. And she was cold. She had left us, had transitioned, and she was pregnant full term as well with my sister Bria at the time. So, me not understanding really what was happening, it felt like an episode of Family Matters for a long time because what happened so swiftly. She passed away in March. I want to say it was like a Tuesday. I think she was due to give birth on that Friday. My friend, my neighbor, I think his name was Ian, was next door, came outside. He was like, "Hey, I saw the ambulance earlier. Did your mom give birth?" And I was like, "No, she died." And I remembered I didn't cry for a long time, right? It wasn't real. My father came, and I hadn't seen him in maybe 6 years or so. I had a real relationship with him in about 6 years. And he came to Dallas, Texas, and I started school in Louisville, Kentucky by August. So my life completely changed. Everyone that I was friends with, everyone I was connected to, my mother, my stepfather, my brother, so my family at that time, they were all gone within a matter of months. And then I moved to this brand new city, and I had to make brand new friends and reconnect with my family, on my father's side, in a whole new way. And my life and my relationships and uh, my entrepreneurial journey, none of that has been the same ever since. It completely altered my life. So I love what you said, Dee, that grief is really a universal human experience that we should honor. But what we should also remember is that it's not necessarily momentary. Although that happened in 1996, it's affected me. It's still up until yesterday. So when I think about that, I think about how do we help people navigate that complexity of grief and mourning as it coexists in every part of our lives, including work, and shows up on days kind of unexpected.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry. Go ahead. What were you saying?
I was just going to ask you, how do you handle that? And if you'd like to share a little bit of your story as well.
Yeah, but first I want to say thank you for being vulnerable. You really told very intimate details there, so thank you for opening that space up. I read a quote as I was researching this topic, and it says grief can destroy you or focus you. Dean
Mm,
Koontz. I think about that when I think about you, it has focused you right on what is the end goal, and what matters most, and how to live a purposeful life, right? And I think a lot of that has to do with your drive and what was innate in you, right? But also how what people were put around you to help you on that journey, right, and support you on that journey. And so I think about what I will say is that um, two things I've learned about grief is to your point, it never really ends. You just learn how to process it differently over time, or you process it better. That's what I've always said. Because I remember when my mother died, everyone said, and the other thing I learned about grief is that it really, when you're thinking about focusing you have to really think about, for me, it was, now what's my position in life? I remember when my mother passed away and I had been taking care of her, and someone said, "DeAngelo, don't get into a relationship," because innately I wanted to take care of someone, and that's exactly what I did. I broke up. I got, my mother passed away, and 3 months later I started talking to someone, and we became enthralled in the relationship very quickly, right? And it was very unhealthy because I was at an unhealthy place. And I remember,
mm,
you remember this, after we broke up, after just 4 months, I would call Blaire every day just crying. I didn't want to get out of bed. I just could not process the level of grief I was having from my mother passing away to now a mate, not having this mate who was in my life who probably shouldn't have, that wasn't a good time to bring anyone into my space, right? And so processing that, and then also processing in that time that my father now was sick, and he was not fighting for his life as I see my mother fight for her life, right? So all of this was coming ahead, and I did not process it well. I literally just wanted to stay in bed every day, and I couldn't see the outlook. I couldn't see the light. Even though I talked about the light, I talked about being the light, I could just not see the light. I was like in a dark, dark place. And I wish, in hindsight, I wish I went to therapy at that time. But what did help me was I just had such a group of great, significant, important friends like yourself, like Lewis, like Natalie and Tanya, and I could go on and on and on with all the people who helped me navigate that space, who was there for me to help me do that. And I also think about the leaders that helped me with that. I mean, both when both of my parents passed away, my leaders actually came to the homegoing services for my parents, or to the funeral, to the viewing. They came and showed their love and support. And so, yes, I think that was. But those were pivotal moments in my life. And you and I talk about this. those, when I think about, this is going to be strange to say, very vulnerable, we're sharing here because we only share this with each other, is that when
Right.
I think about what are pivotal moments that change me, those are the most heightened level of pivotal moments in my life. And I
Mhm.
don't think anything else will ever change me as much as those moments have in my life.
You said a whole word there. 'Cause I mean, it's one of those things where um because we are, I say it morbidly with a smile on my face because we're older, but I'm like, we're orphans, it's I lost my father 10 years ago as well, and that was even more tragic in hindsight for me because we didn't have the best relationship, and I feel like there was something that I may have been able to do to enjoy those last moments with him, and there's guilt sometimes, right? And so when I think about the relationships, whether it's personal relationships or whatever the case may be, I struggle to be around people who are sick because my father was sick during that time. And I always felt like he could do more to take care of his health. So that also trickles into some of my healthy lifestyle habits that I have now, right? So I think about what you were saying about how grief and mourning can create this purposeful space in our life. Because I think we start to realize we're not immortal, right? We're going to go somewhere
Mhm,
else when this thing
mhm,
is over. So, what do we do with our time while we're here? And I'm sure you're going to say it earlier, you're going to say it later, but one of the things you said that you heard from me and that really stuck with you was when I said everything happens for a reason. Now, I wouldn't recommend saying that to someone after they just come back from bereavement or anything like that. Girl, you'll be all right. Everything happens for a reason. But I would encourage people to, when people are having this discussion and they're starting to share things and they're just like, I don't know, why wasn't it me? And all of these things. You, of course, let people feel their feels and go through those stages of grief and go through those stages of mourning, but also encouraging them to think more about, how would that person want you to live your life now?
mhm.
And what did you learn from that person that you can bring into how you're living your life so that their legacy lives on? I think that those things have really been um, important to me as I navigate grief and loss.
I think I think when you said that to me, I needed visibly to see. I was able to see someone who
Mhm.
had has survived that level of trauma and pain and grief, right? And another thing I think about into what you're saying is that this is going to be harsh, but what I'm going to try, I'm just going to say it's probably not going to come out right, but I'm just going to say, don't make sure that that existence of that person after that, you have a purposeful, don't let their life be in vain. So what is the purpose, and what are you going to take from what they gave you in that small time they were here on earth, and how are you going to use that with your life for others? I remember one of the in turn, you gave me that knowledge. You gave me that bit. And I remember my mother passed away and how vocal I was on Facebook, right? Of just kind of sharing my journey. And shortly after that, one of my very close friends, their mother passed away, who was well known in the city, boisterous personality, love her. And I remember hugging my friend, and she said, "Thank you. Seeing you has helped me understand what, like, go through this." And I was like,
Mhm.
"Oh." And so you start to understand
It
that
starts to click, doesn't
it
it?
does start to click, but you're like, am I the only one listening to me? And when you see that other people are listening and taking in that whatever you're putting out into the universe, I think you start to once again you start to understand that uh, you start to understand that the alignment that life has. Maybe that's what it's
Yes.
about. How the universe is aligning things, right? So even if things are, it's kind of like when you're taking a detour in life and you're like, oh, I've had to take this detour, but you're ending up at the same place that you're supposed to be at, right? And so
Yeah.
it's kind of like how life sometimes has those detours of, no, you didn't expect for this person to be taken away from your life or to go away from your life, but how might that detour end back up to a space where you're still inspiring and uplifting and helping others navigate pain or whatever it may be in their life, right? So you're getting back to your kind of core of what's important to you, but it may look differently because you did have to take that detour.
Truly. Let me ask you a question, because I was doing a little research on this topic as well, and it felt like, backwards research. I'm like, oh, I should have did this research during the time, help me get through it, right?
Yes, yeah.
But apparently, there's different stage or a stage theory by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross during the process of dying, but it's denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And I feel like, those who are living, we experience that as well, right? As we go through mourning. Um, Talk to us, if you don't mind sharing a little bit about your journey through those stages and how it in fact impacted maybe how you showed up at work during that time too.
Oh, I mean, well, all of it because I went through all of it. And it showed up as, first thing is you go back to work thinking, I need to be, you think you need to be around people or you need to be out of this space of being in your own self pity, right? And so you're in denial that you're going through that this event has happened. So you go back to work. And I just remember every day crying at my desk for weeks and weeks and weeks. I would just cry at my desk at any given time. And I would just have to sit there and sit in it, right? And so it was definitely, I mean, I think I went through being being angry, right, and being upset and bargaining that this shouldn't have happened, or how could it happen differently, or how do I navigate all of these different things that are coming into my space. So I think it was very difficult. I went through all those stages, and so what I'll share from a reflective point of how did how do leaders show up and how I've had to learn to show up as a leader, Blaire. I'll share this is I'm calling it because I know you like acronyms. So today I thought about this. I was like, I'm
Okay.
calling it you at the pace. And if we know about anything about pace, it's about how the movement, right? And the movement of progress and understanding that a person's grief progress and how they process grief may last longer and it may be over a lifetime and it may look differently for everyone. But pace is the first thing is to be present in the moment. So as a leader, make sure that you're present with them as they're going through this, as they're experiencing this, and make sure that you're in present. Could be being there physically. It can mean make sure you're making eye contact with me, or it could mean showing up at a homegoing or at a service, or making sure that you're taking them out to brunch or lunch or whatever it is. So being present in that moment. A
Mhm.
is that acknowledge. So really acknowledging that this has happened, right? It doesn't mean all the time, but it is the difference of saying, um, maybe the difference of saying, oh, what are you and your mom doing for Mother's Day? Knowing that person doesn't have a mother, maybe acknowledging and saying, hey, are you going to be around family for Mother's Day? Is there something, would you like to come and attend family with me? So it's really still acknowledging this person is going through this experience because I think we have to make it real, right? And I think
Right.
sometimes it hurts, but it is part of that healing process. And then C is be compassionate because I think so many leaders sometimes are not fully understanding uh, people's different levels of grief and what they're going through. And because you haven't been through that, you don't know how to show up, right? It feels
Right.
foreign to you. And maybe you haven't been through, maybe someone is going through a divorce. Maybe someone is going through whatever sort of loss they're going through and you haven't experienced that. We still need you to be compassionate, to be show empathy and to lean into that. And E, I thought about this like because E should be energy, should be this, but make sure it's equitable, right? Because what we assume sometimes is that people who are stronger in the workforce, right? We think about, let's think about Black women in the workforce. We think because they come off with this, because many times we assume them to be the strong ones, or women in general in the workplace. Are we showing equal compassion, equal compassion, empathy, and time for all employees? Are we thinking about? I just met a lady yesterday who went through divorce, and in the divorce they had to trade off dogs, right? And that's what they. Some days she had the dog, some days he had the dog, and we were out to brunch yesterday, and it was a trade off day, and after she traded the dog, she came and sat with us, and that was really caused a lot of anxiety and heartache for her because part of that dog represented consistency for her, right? And so at that moment, she was in grieving. She was grieving the loss of relationship and grieving a dog. And maybe as a leader, I didn't understand. I may be like, I've never had a dog, right? But how do we show equal compassion for someone who's grieving differently than we are, who's grieving over something different? So as I think about leaders, if you're going to help associates, and when the leaders that I've had in my life that have helped me navigate this, it was really by using kind of that pace, as I would call it.
I like
And
that. You
then,
came to educate us today. I
what
appreciate
about
that.
thank you, Blaire? But what about you? What has been how have you navigated grief in the workplace?
So again, as I was doing a little bit more reading, I learned the difference between grief and mourning. So think of grief as like the container. It holds your thoughts, your feelings, and different images of the experience when that loved one dies. As opposed to the mourning, like the mourning, I guess, happens within that process. Mourning is basically how you express it outside of yourself. It's a little different for me because I was 12 years old when my mom passed. So I've experienced it all the time, it feels like my entire life. And then with my father is different because of the relationship or lack of relationship there. So honestly, I don't think I've ever truly expressed myself in the workplace as it pertains to losing my parents. Um, when I think about um, my son, he's definitely lost a very close his sibling, a sibling, when she was very young. And then in 2020, my entire family lost a very exuberant, energetic, beautiful human being, our cousin Jonah Ware. And I would say actually maybe that was the time that I experienced it. So we were all working remotely, right? And for me, I was super energized during 2020. I was like, man, this is the time to get my businesses going. While my peers need to rest and they feel exhausted by everything that they're seeing, I feel it, but I feel compelled to do something. So that's actually when the corporate strategist was born. We also launched 2020 and canceled. So y'all had the pleasure of seeing Karen on Friday's show. And between us and another business partner, we had a weekly show where we invited guests on, Black guests, all kinds of guests actually, to talk about different topics to keep people energized during that time. And in August of 2020, when Jonah was killed, I slowed all the way down. I did not come to, I think it was just maybe two shows, so it was 2 weeks, but it stopped me in my tracks. So when we talk about being purposeful, then I was thinking about how do I monetize my gifts? How do I take full advantage of this opportunity? How do I, help these organizations, and how do I help people navigate the complexities of corporate America? And that felt purposeful. But then when someone like that, someone so sweet, so solid, 19 years old, a musician, doing all the things who made a really big impact on the city of Louisville, Kentucky, and, moving into other areas like Atlanta, I think, okay, how do I take his moment, like you said earlier, how do I take the things that he was doing in his life and really make it much more purposeful in mine? So the only thing that I could say about, how people kind of corralled around me in the workplace is, those two business partners, of course, they kept running the show. They were very supportive of how I showed up at when I returned. But for me, it just changed how I wanted to show up in life. And I think that I have a tendency to always make things really meaningful. That it's the Sag in me, unapologetically. But yeah, I would say, I think it's just having people around who were, including yourself, right? Texting or calling, asking if we were okay, checking on Trent, my son, and for us to figure out how do we do this with extended family too. So it was more family focused.
Well, I think one of the key takeaways today is that I want people to know that uh, finding out what the purpose and meaning from these traumas or that grief or that experience in your life doesn't happen overnight. It takes
Yeah.
time, and it's okay to take time. I think one of the most important stories I think that when I think about what I took from my mother was one day she was, and my mother had a rare form of bone cancer. I
Mhm.
remember one day she was planting flowers at my neighbor's yard. And I was like, why are you planting those flowers? And she was like, well, because I told her I was going to do this and I want to do this for
Mhm.
her. And after she passed away, those flowers still bloom many years afterwards in my neighbor's yard. And so I tell that story because when we think about how these things impact us, I think we have to think about how do we one day find the beauty in that experience, right? And it's hard to do. I'm not saying it's easy, but I'm
Right.
saying we have to find the beauty, the peace, and the purpose. And as you've done, and I'm continuing to figure that out, is how do we find the passion in that, right? What passion
Mhm.
comes from that moment? What purpose comes from that moment? And how do we live up to those moments? So, yeah, we wasn't supposed to cry today. This is supposed to be not
Did you cry? I felt really solid. I would say one of the takeaways too, just as I was doing that research too, is just thinking about how do we express ourselves? Because I know for a very long time I have pinned up the story, or I have kept things to myself, or as you said, this affects people. It affects all people, but it could affect people differently in the workplace. As a Black woman, I felt like I was supposed to come, show up strong. I was
Yes.
supposed to be resilient. This isn't anything I was supposed to cry about, especially, ages later, decades later. So I want us to feel encouraged to express ourselves, to have someone to talk to go to therapy, like DeAngelo said. And hopefully you have somebody that's like DeAngelo that can walk along that path with you. And hopefully you all don't have to endure what we endure to come to these epiphanies. So I'm just sending some love out to every motherless child out there, everyone that felt triggered by Mother's Day yesterday because of losing a child, or not being with their parent, or wanting to be a mother. All of those things, it shows up in so many different ways, and I think we can all learn from each other on how to be better to each other.
Oh yeah, I would agree with you. And just organizations. One of the things that I just thought about this, we didn't get into this. I think there's so many places. Every time we have a topic, I think we need to have a show about what do we leave off the table, right? Is how organizations create psychological safety where people can come in and say, I'm a mess today because I'm in my grieving period, right? And so I just think, and that's for life, right? And so how do we be able to say that? And so I think we've got to, if you want to have engaged employees who feel like they belong, that is part of that process.
It is.
Of belonging is being able to say, here's where I'm at today because it was Mother's Day yesterday and I don't have a mother and I'm not feeling in a good space today, but here I am showing up the best way I know how, which is just being here, existing, right? Sometimes, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Well said. I'm proud of us. I'm high fiving and hugging us from a distance. I know that wasn't an easy topic. And as y'all can see, I mean, we go live, so it's not rehearsed. I don't think we have ever had this conversation publicly. I would love to continue the dialogue, especially with other folks who have experienced this type of grief and any others. So let's make sure that we do continue the conversation at some point. I'm proud of you, Dee, and I love you.
I love you too. All right. I love you too. We did it. Yeah. I'll see you later. We're going to be in the same place for the rest of the
We
week,
will.
right?
We will be in the same place for the rest of the week. Thank you all for your love and support. I see Portia saying this was so good. And your friend Day, I hope I said that correctly, Day Marie, she's sending lots of love and lots of hearts too. All right. Well, we hope to see y'all tomorrow and every day thereafter. And Lewis, we'll plan to have you on the show. Portia, we plan to have you on the show. Day,
Okay.
have you on the show as well, hopefully next week. And we'll see y'all tomorrow and every day after at 12 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you for joining us at the Black Diva Collective. Y'all have a great day. Bye.